Hey everyone, PJ Mills here again, and today, just like I promised, I want to take a behind-the-scenes look at one of the music video projects that I was involved with recently. And hopefully, after we take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, y'all will be able to glean some helpful information from the whole process. I thought it might be cool to focus specifically on the topic of capturing performance footage for this episode. And the video we'll be utilizing is actually the very first official music video I ever directed, The Poor and the Saint, by San Antonio-based rock band Fulcrum Lake. Now, obviously, like a lot of people, I had created a handful of fan-made music videos with various friends and family over the years. And because of this, there were a few things I knew would probably have to happen on set when it came to covering the band, such as playback and whatnot. But back in 2015, when this project fell into my lap, I was very much a rookie to the music video process. Because of the fact that I don't have any behind-the-scenes footage, all I have is the raw footage from the music video. It won't be as fantastic as I would love it to be, because I really would love to show y'all official behind-the-scenes footage with me behind the camera. But I'll kind of walk y'all through just maybe some things that I learned, some mistakes I made, and yeah, hopefully y'all will get something from this. Alright, so the very first shot that we captured that day was a wide shot of the full band performing, and I was across the lake, or pond if you will, and I was using this beautiful 70 to 200 millimeter lens on a Canon C100 that thankfully I was actually able to borrow from my boss at the time, which is awesome because we definitely didn't have the budget to rent anything of that magnitude, but he was very gracious and let us borrow that. And as you can see in this clip, we had gotten our hands on a couple fog machines, and they were definitely not really working like we thought they would. Which in hindsight makes sense. We were outside, so of course they didn't really work as well as they could have, and we were shooting a very, very wide shot, so it didn't really look that great, and most of the time it kind of covered the band, unfortunately. But lesson learned, fog doesn't work super great when you're outside on a windy morning, and something that y'all may not think about is the fact that when you're far away from playback and you're in a big open space, sound tends to bounce off the surrounding, and sometimes by the time it gets back to the camera internal mic, there's a bit of a delay there. So I kind of played around with the volume to have it as loud as I could without completely deafening the band, but it was important to me to make sure that syncing in post could be as smooth as possible. As y'all can see, the smoke is clearly not working for us, kind of working against us. And that was something I was kind of becoming aware of as this shot was taking place, was, you know what, this is not going to work. So I actually ended up cutting the very first take, and we kind of redid it, and we repositioned the fog machines to hopefully spit out behind the performers. After repositioning the fog machines and getting a few minor things adjusted, we restarted the take, and this was going to be a full song coverage, so they were going to be doing the song from start to finish. And it actually ended up going a lot better. The fog worked for us a little bit better. There were a couple times it didn't look super great, but there was a small period of time that it pretty much looked exactly like we were wanting it to look, because the idea was we wanted to kind of look like the steam rising off a body of water in the early morning time. And well, most of the time it kind of just looked like they had a campfire behind the speaker, or one of the speakers was on fire or something like that. There was a brief moment, and it's right there, when it just really, really looked great, and we were pretty excited about that shot. I know for me, and I think as with most cinematographers, 85% of the time we just kind of discover happy accidents, and things just kind of work out like that. At least for me. I mean, other cinematographers might have their act together, but I find myself more often than not just stumbling across something that looks really good and being like, oh, awesome, that actually looks great. All right, cool, we're rolling with that. And this scenario is definitely one of those situations for me that it just kind of, the fog just happened to be in the right place at the right time. The performers were doing a fantastic job, and yeah, it didn't look half bad. And I wanted, it's funny, I wish I could have used more of that take in the finished product of the music video, but the fog kind of started messing up again, so we kind of only got a small section of time where we were able to use the footage. For the next shot, I moved to a small patch of trees that was to the left of me, and that gave me something to kind of rack focus on between the band performing and then the trees. Because the thing is, in music videos, I see a lot of focus adjusting and whatnot, and that's cool. You know, obviously it works for music videos, but I'm kind of the type of person that if I'm gonna be racking focus, I wanna rack focus to something. I don't wanna just mess with the focus for no purpose. And so it was kind of important for me to have something in the foreground that I could focus on. And also I wanted to kind of, you know, nail down the fact that they're in the woods and they're surrounded by trees and all that good stuff. One thing I remember talking about with them on this take was the fact that I really wanted them to kind of up the intensity, because kind of like when you're in theater or in a play and you're far away from an audience, you kind of have to over exaggerate your movements because subtle things get missed when you're further away. And so I didn't want them to just look like a bunch of bobbleheads in the middle of the woods. I kind of told them, hey, rock out maybe a little harder than you would normally, because I want to be sure and not miss y'all headbanging and all that good stuff. For the next take, I got considerably closer to the band and switched my lens to what I believe was a 16 to 35 millimeter, and I was on a slider and just moved back and forth. And it was definitely, the light was starting to change because we were shooting in the morning time, and that meant the sun was coming up and things were kind of getting brighter and brighter as we were going along, and I was kind of desperately trying to move as quickly as possible because I didn't want to lose all the nice morning light that I had, but I also wanted to try to get as much coverage as possible. And the guys did a great job. They rocked out. Obviously, because I was considerably closer, we were able to kind of down the playback volume just a little bit, but it still had to be quite loud to assure that the drummer was able to keep in track and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure we actually had playback hidden behind that speaker. I think that's the guitar speaker or lead guitar player. BZ is his name. I'm pretty sure we had it hidden behind there. And we just had the cable kind of running through the grass to try to keep that hidden. And I think we also had some fog machines behind the speakers, but at this point they were kind of running low on juice, so they would sometimes spit out fog and sometimes not. Yeah, okay, yeah. There you go, it's behind the drummer there. So it's kind of spitting out a little bit, but as time went on, it just looked more and more like a campfire. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had just removed it. I wish I had said, oh, you know what? I think we're gonna call it quits on the fog and move on, but I really was hoping it might kind of work itself out and we might have another magical moment, kind of like we did before, but because I didn't decide to move it, there were a couple shots that the drummer just looked like he was on fire and kind of ruined the shot. So I was like, man. The next take that we did, actually, quick disclaimer before I keep talking, is every single take that we've done up to this point was the full song from start to finish. So my wife would begin playback and the performers would start the full song. And I'm gonna actually talk about that further here in a little bit, but I'm gonna just go ahead and cover all the shots that I did of the full band. Obviously this one was kind of focused on the guitar player and the drummer, and one kind of major mistake that you may have caught on is the fact that I didn't really set up the shot for as soon as he went down with the headbang, and so as soon as he came down headbanging, the shot didn't really look good anymore. And so that's one thing that I kind of learned is if you're gonna have your performers headbanging, have them get into the position that they're planning on going in. That way you can kind of anticipate that, because if you're set up for them standing up and then they start headbanging, it's gonna mess everything up. And this shot is pretty much just rack focusing between the lead guitar player and then the drummer. And you can see there, the lead singer, Daniel, he's kind of occasionally steps in there. And one mistake that I made that I kind of wish, well actually two mistakes. One, you can see the fog machine right behind the drummer there. I completely missed that at the time. But another thing that I kind of wish I had done was not had the lead singer and the bass player performing at all, because that was just tiring them out for no reason whatsoever. I could have saved their energy and had them just take a break, but I was in my head, I was like, oh hey, I might pan over and get them, and because of that I had them, you know, rocking out. But of course for this take you can't see them at all, so if someone's not in the shot, there's no reason for them to be there or be exerting energy, because it does take a lot of energy to headbang and whatnot.
We're ready.
The next setup was another full band coverage, and I kind of just moved a little bit around the band where I wasn't originally, and I was a little more kind of free with my positioning. I did a couple zooms and things of that nature, whereas before I tried to keep it as fixed as I could with just an occasional slide and whatnot, but this one was a lot more mobile and whatnot, still having it on the tripod with the slider. Obviously the fog machine's still puffing, and really it's kind of making things complicated. It's creating a little bit of haze, but I can say this, in post it made color correction an absolute monster, and I wish I had just given up, because the problem was, because I was starting to get a lot of sunlight, and you can kind of see there's a little bit of lens flare coming in, and just working with the color there was really difficult. And because this was actually one of the angles that I really liked, it was kind of a bummer that I had so much trouble with the color on it. You can see kind of our little behind the scenes stuff set up over there. Alright, so we have yet another full take of the song, and this time I took the camera off the tripod and was just holding it, and I was just gonna move all around the band and just kind of get a bunch of different shots and see what I could get. Once again, that fog machine is being an absolute nuisance, but hey, you know, it's just going through this is like rubbing it in my face, like, man, why was I not thinking about it? I should have been thinking about that, but oh well. So yeah, obviously, you know, I got pretty close to the lead singer and whatnot. One thing to keep in mind is make sure if you're going to be getting close to the performers, they can kind of know that you're going to be getting up in their face, especially the lead singer. Because if they're not anticipating you getting super close to them, they may kind of, you know, react, and it may ruin the shot a little bit. So I know I kind of specifically told Daniel, the lead singer, hey, just FYI, I'm probably going to get a little bit close, and he's like, all right, thanks for letting me know. Obviously, I didn't have any kind of steady cam or anything like that. I was just holding the C100 with my hand, so it's a little shaky, but the stabilizers and a lot of Canon cameras are actually really great. And what we have here is yet another handheld shot of the full band performing the full song. As you can see, the fog machine at this point is just a little out of control, and with that sunlight mixed in, it just was really kind of getting a little crazy. I was trying to go a little bit more shaky with this shot and try to just think outside the box with some shots, but the sun was definitely kind of starting to mess with me a little bit. And that really nice morning light that we had originally had kind of faded at this point. It was just full-on daylight, which can work, you know, depending on what you're going for, but we were trying to do as much as we could before that happened, and it was inevitable. We just kind of ran into daylight big time. But this little rack focus right here between the lead singer's guitar and then the mic stand is still one of my favorite shots from the video. It just really looked pretty cool. Again, one of those happy accidents that just kind of fell into my lap. The guys were starting to get pretty tired at this point, and that actually I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about something that I kind of wish I had done before, and that's just when you're getting coverage of the full band. I know I mentioned only have the performers that you're focusing on perform, but also don't have your band play the full song over and over again in the middle of a summer day when the sun's beating down on them. Because I get, you know, you want to get as much coverage as possible, but maybe, you know, get a system worked out that, you know, you get a shot of the guitar player, you get a shot of the drummer, and then you kind of break things up to give people breaks. Because my initial idea was I wanted to get all the full coverage of the band, and then I wanted to start on the single shots. But by the time I got all the full coverage that I was wanting of the band, all the guys were just completely exhausted. And I can say at this point they were already getting pretty tired and sweaty. Here's yet another take of the full song, and I know y'all are probably thinking, holy cow, how many times are you going to have these guys play this song? Too many times. I worked them way too hard, because the truth of the matter is a lot of this stuff I didn't even use. It was too much coverage. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, there's no such thing as too much coverage, but when it comes to performing a song and being out in the summer heat, there is such thing as too much coverage. And I can say that I definitely had them perform the song way too many times, but they were troopers, and they kept working with me. They never got frustrated. They were super patient, and because I know for them, they really wanted the video to look as good as it possibly could. This shot, again, it's terrible because, you know, I wish I hadn't had them do this, because it was more of a waste of time. But because they were so tired, they were really kind of having a hard time really getting into it, and they were pretty sweaty and whatnot. One thing is, when you're dealing with trying to get all this footage and you're directing, producing, you're also the cinematographer, you definitely miss things. And I can say that's one thing, that if you have a chance to have a cinematographer or someone shoot your project for you, absolutely do that. At this point in my career, that's what I'm doing. I hire cinematographers, and it's so much easier that way, because then you can really focus on directing and making sure things look as good as possible, and the cinematographer can focus on the shot. And that's kind of, from my perspective, the best way to do it. But if you're the guy doing everything, then do the best that you can, and when you're in the edit, you can hit yourself for not adjusting the iris. At this point in the shoot, we had moved on to the single shots, and we relocated not very far away, and just kind of the first person that I worked with was the bassist, Steve, and got him set up. One nice thing is, because we're not utilizing the drums, playback doesn't have to be super loud, so I'm pretty sure we just used a cell phone, and we had it near the camera so I could get it synced up for playback, and he doesn't have to hear it super loud to kind of follow along. And yeah, it worked out pretty good. At this point, I think I began to realize that having them perform the full song from start to finish was a little impractical and not really very good on time, because while obviously it's really nice for syncing everything up in post, I knew that a good chunk of the time I wasn't going to be utilizing the shots until later in the song. And this might be a little unconventional, but I kind of starting at the halfway point on the song, and then they would perform the song from the halfway point to the end, just because I was trying to, one, save as much time as possible, and then also just save them the effort of going through the full song. Because it's not a super long song, but if you're doing the same thing for 4 minutes over and over again, it gets pretty exhausting. So in an attempt to kind of make things a little easier for them, I started kind of cutting the takes in half, if you will, and just having them perform half the song. And the truth of the matter is while it did make things complicated in the edit, if you know what you're doing, a chorus is gonna be fairly similar most of the time. And you can, if you want, you can pull a chorus from later in the song and then have, that chorus be as the first chorus. And naturally, you want to make sure that what they're playing is the same, but most of the time it is, so it's pretty easy to sync up. And I know it's not, it's not ideal, because obviously it's a lot of work on the editor, but because I was the editor, I was like, well, I'll figure it out. I'll make it work for me. The next person who I transitioned into getting the single shots for was Michael, the drummer, and because we had to put so much effort into lugging the drums to the location, I wanted to get as much drum coverage as possible. So he was a trooper and worked with me, and we got the full song on him. And I was able to get a couple different shots. One kind of from the front, just a run-of-the-mill shot, and then a couple just kind of panning around, because I really wanted to get some good shots of the cymbal hits, because those always look good in a music video. And in case you're wondering, we did have to bring back the speaker for playback. So it was, once again, very, very loud. And we actually had the lead singer holding the speaker up directly at the drummer, so he could really get a good, clear sound of the playback. Because of the fact that we were focused solely on the drummer, he wanted to make sure that he was 100% on point and not making any mistakes and whatnot. So we definitely had it really loud. We were blasting him real good with that sound. The next person I moved on to was the lead singer, Daniel, and his coverage was a little unique because he also plays rhythm guitar. So I wanted to be sure that I had coverage of rhythm guitar as well as his vocals. So we had to do a couple takes of the beginning intro with him doing the rhythm guitar lead kind of riff, and then throughout the song just get some close-ups of him playing and whatnot. And then it was important to have full coverage of him singing. So we did the song, I think maybe twice. And the real problem is, and this is something Daniel, you're probably going to see this, so I apologize profusely for having you sing the song over and over again, because by the end of it, he definitely had a pretty severe migraine headache, and you can kind of see it at the end of the take when we cut. Like, he's clearly hurting pretty good.
Are you having fun? No, not even remotely. I'm just kidding.
In hindsight, I'm like, I probably should have toned it back just a little bit, and maybe been a little bit more cognizant of the fact that the poor guy was hurting pretty good. But Daniel, I commend you for sticking with me and not wringing my neck. The last thing that I shot that day was the lead guitarist, BZ. I got a wide shot of him performing the song. or like half the song or something like that. I don't exactly remember. And then I got a close-up of him performing the solo. And I think I got a couple intersplice shots of him playing lead and whatnot, kind of to put in there in various spots. But as you can kind of see in the background, the light was just completely out of control. I could not get it to look the way I wanted to. I didn't have anyone helping me with lighting whatsoever, and so a lot of it's blown out, and it made editing an absolute nightmare in a lot of ways. Color correcting these shots was just horrendously difficult. And I can say, well, I think BZ did a phenomenal job, and you know, he put his all into it. It was really hard for me to sometimes utilize some of these shots because I was like, man, PJ, these just look so ugly. Why didn't you tone down the iris or have him reposition or something? But I think the truth of the matter is it was the end of the shoot and we were all so exhausted and just ready to be done. So I just was trying to get something. So obviously I know this format was really, really laid back. It was a little more just kind of me talking and whatnot. And obviously there's a lot more to the process, and I'd love to eventually maybe go into more detail about capturing the story portion of the video, because obviously while the performance is a big part of the video, there's a whole story. It's not overly complicated, but there is a story kind of wrapped up into that. And then there was a whole process to shooting that and whatnot. But I just thought it would be kind of a cool idea to start this first episode off with just talking about the performance stuff. And obviously at this point I've done quite a few more videos, and capturing performance footage has gotten a lot less headache inducing, and I mean that literally. So I'd love to maybe do another episode on capturing performance footage, because I can say capturing performance footage when you have a cinematographer is very, very different. Let me know in the comment section below what y'all thought about this. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it and got something out of it, and I will be planning to do more of these in the future. So hope y'all enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see y'all soon. Oh, and I completely forgot, if y'all haven't heard of Fulcrum Lake, y'all need to go check them out, because they're really, really talented and some great guys. I mean, obviously I've spent quite a bit of time with them, and I definitely consider them to be my personal friends. Go support them, because local rock music is awesome.